Hello, from fans. Welcome back. I'm the movie guru. On this episode, I'm going to go over who are the Ghoulish Kids. First, in a pair, then in a group of four, the Ghoulish Kids appear to Tabitha while exiting the underground cave in what looks like a cell with bars made of sticks. Bars work both ways, of course, to keep what's inside, but also to keep what's in from getting out. Season 2 picks up with Victor and Tabitha in the caves. Now, originally, I thought the caves may have just been one room, but we see there is a room with random stuff like TV, suitcases, a tricycle, and then Victor sees the mannequin. While he's freaking out, Tabitha goes after him, and they end up going down another hallway. Now, after leaving this hallway, they come to another room with a small cage and two sleeping creatures. And my first watch, I thought this was in the one room. And so fast forward to season 2, when Jade enters the cave, he enters this room first. And that's where he has the visions. He sees the cages, and that's where he sees the symbol. Now, going back to season 2, episode 1, Victor says to Tabitha she shouldn't have done that. And so my first thoughts was, done what? Because it looked to me like she didn't really do anything. How could she unleashed these evil spirits of these damned kids if all she did was flash a flashlight? The creatures did wake up. One detail I noticed about them was while they're in this cave or while they're sleeping in this daytime, their eyes are white. And so the creatures get up and start walking towards them, kind of towards the light, but in a mindless way. I wouldn't say that they were the normal creatures. They didn't have their people face on pretty much. It looked as if they were just going through the motions, walking towards the light, or doing some sort of routine, which I'm guessing if they were in that room, then they are the keepers of the children. Now, we have seen the cheerleader before outside the cave, but the second creature we have not. And this creature is who I believe is credited as Mob Guy. He kind of looked like the Mob Guy. He had like a blazer on, but of course they all have that same creature face, so I couldn't tell if, any different. Now, when Tabitha sees the kids, no one saw the kids until she saw them, until she went in the cave. Now, does that mean if she hadn't dug the hole, we would have never seen the kids? Because I think that is the next progression of the game, if you will. Sort of level 1 was just the creatures, level 2 being the kids, level 3 being the lighthouse, and level 4 possibly being they're back in the real world. I do believe that Tabitha would have still made her way to the tower or the lighthouse, even if she hadn't dug the hole, because I believe there are multiple clues that if she pulled the threads on, it would have led her in that direction already. And this one clue, which I believe is an abandoned storyline, is Jim's bracelet. There was quite a bit conversation about Jim's bracelet, from her finding it, the way the camera panned in on it, also from the way she brought it up to Jim. And when she confronted him about it, he had no clue. And so there's a big mystery wrapped around this bracelet that I believe that she could have possibly kept investigating. Maybe what I think she would have done was investigate that back room a little more in the diner, and she might have found the book that Jade found, and then she would have been the one looking for the symbol. And that symbol might have taken her to the caves, and so she would have seen the kids. I believe that's what would have happened to her. From what we know, the kids were kept in this underground prison until they were needed for whatever is going on down there. Then when they were needed, they were put on what looks like sacrificial or offering tables facing up towards the ceiling. Now there's a hole in this ceiling, and that is where they see the symbol. I would define this as the trees growing over this entrance. I wouldn't really define it as a symbol, meaning someone didn't create that. But let's say that the way the scene looked, the way the kids are around in that circle, the way the sun is coming in, and the way the trees cover and the vines are growing up, it could be some sort of power that they're giving whatever this ritual, routine, or sacrifice is. From what we saw in season 2, episode 10, the kids were laying on their back with no hand or no feet restraints, so they were not tied in. And my initial thought here was, could they be willing participants in whatever was going on here? Could they be the ones initiating this process? very much like Children of the Corn. Are they willing or having their life force drained? They do look very pale. They do look like they've been in a dungeon. And I want to also add, very similar to Martin, except he was chained. These kids were not. And the pale being due to lack of sunlight exposure. The way they looked and for what Tabitha saw when she looked at them, did she know that they might transfer the worms to her? And is that why she said, "Don't touch me"? Because that was a real "don't touch me." Like, she really, really didn't want those kids to touch her. And if you're looking for the kids trying to help, wouldn't you think it would be opposite? Wouldn't you be thinking that they need some help? But it didn't really look like they needed help. And it looked like she knew to not have them touch her. So at that scene, I wonder if they did touch her, and let's say she had got a scratch, like, boy, would she have had the worms? Or does she even know about the worms? Does she know that in this place they're not supposed to touch you? Now, if they are voluntarily doing this, this gives the kids the potential to be the main or additional villain and from what's trapping these people in this place. If they are causing the trees to grow, like Victor said in season 1, and causing the creatures to leave the cave or possessing them, this would give the kids the potential to be the main or an additional villain in what's trapping the people in this place. It seems like they could be behind what's causing the trees to grow closer, like Victor said in season 1, what is possessing the creatures during the night, causing them to go out and look for the people, and even controlling or watching the birds from the skies. Now, the kids' eyes were not white when they approached Tabitha. They seemed to have regular eyes. So it didn't seem like they were this void or being mind controlled. They seemed very much there in that moment, but just had a language barrier that was stopping the communication or just talking in riddles. And so I really believe that they were the aggressors in this situation and not the ones that needed saving, even though they were presenting themselves to Tabitha, because they didn't really say anything to her when they first appeared. They just kind of this eerie presence and kind of just follow her around. I kind of was looking for more information on that, and recently the MGM official page of From just posted a clip of the caves with the title, "Did the Kids Need to Be Saved?" So this kind of supports that theory that I just saw, that the kids were voluntarily doing this and they might be the ones who's creating or harnessing this power to use. As us fans know, the show doesn't give us much to go on. Each episode, we don't know what's going on. We don't know the storyline. And the characters follow a similar Stephen King approach. And one story that could parallel these Ghoulish Kids is Children of the Corn. Now, Children of the Corn was produced in 1984 and since then has 9 versions of movies. And the original script and short story was written by Stephen King. Published in the March issue of Penthouse, right? In 1977. How about that twist? Now, Children of the Corn is heavily intertwined with religious symbolism, including praising a demon god known as He Who Walks Beneath the Rose. Now, the children, rituals and sacrifice, and the demon forces the children to kill their parents and sacrifice themselves when they get old enough. This monster is controlling and manipulating them into doing whatever he desires. This is pretty much the same thing that could be going on over here. Even though the kids are being held in cages, it doesn't necessarily look like they're being held against their will when they were laying on the sacrificial table, and they seem to be the ones who are luring the people in. Another show that deals with this same type of From setup or with kids and a story of what's going on is a Twilight Zone and a young boy with special powers. And this boy, he's sort of terrorizing the residents of this small town by reading their thoughts. Now, this causes everyone to maintain this fake facade of happiness and cheerful thoughts when they're actually living in constant fear. Now, similarly, this short story was published in Star Science Fiction Stories, but it could be a reference to Star Magic. So Star Magic was once the sign that was on the hotel. Also, we saw some of the flashbacks in season 1, but then was removed. Current storyline with Boyd and everybody else is just an empty sign. And everyone's kind of been trying to figure out what this Star Magic was. And so could the Star Magic be related to the Star Fiction Stories used as a reference for It's a Good Life in the Twilight Zone episode? I mean, there's a lot of parallels. The kids are credited as Ghoulish Childs 1, 2, and 3, and one Ghastly Kid. So what's the difference between a Ghoulish Kid and a Ghastly Kid? So they all appear as children between the ages of, I'll say, 10 and 14. All kind of tall and slender, but not as tall as Tabitha. and they do have long fingernails, just like Martin did. Now, I would say they are called ghoulish and ghastly, but my theory is they could be myling. I honestly think it's the only way to describe what the kids are. So, what is a myling? It is a ghost of a murdered child, usually from the practice of a parent leaving an infant in the woods to die of exposure or be eaten by an animal. These terrifying creatures are said to haunt woods in rural areas, following lone travelers and attempting to force them to take the ghost to the graveyard. There's other interpretations state that mylings can be created in any situation where a child is killed by their parents. This includes abandonment because they were unwanted, murder due to abuse or neglect, and even situations where the parents just wasn't watching the child. So mylings are the restless spirits of children that were abandoned by their parents to die. I also want to point out that even though these kids are kept in cages, they don't look like they were killed, only maybe starved and pale, like the life force was sucked out of them. A famous story of myling lore is Hansel and Gretel. In the original tale, Hansel and Gretel weren't just going for a walk in the forest. They had been abandoned by their parents because the family could no longer feed them. So this makes their entrance into the witch's candy cottage all the more sinister. The reason why I'm making a connection between Hansel and Gretel, the mylings, is because it also combines witches. And we have some heavy speculation on the show that there is a witch among them, and that the witch appeared to Elgin and acted out his phobia. And that's kind of what I've been getting at since I started doing these From theories, that the phobias are being acted out by the entity or creatures or the boy in white. So I saw a clip on the MGM From page about what the phobia is to fear of falling to your death, the fear of being stabbed, the fear of drowning. Like, these are all posted on the From page, and these are all done by things. Nobody's doing the fears to themselves. The fears are coming to them. It's possible that the reason why the creatures look the way they do is because it's possible fears that other people had. Fear of the milkman, fear of milk, fear of getting married, fear of cowboys, fear of being drowned, fear of falling. And the fear doesn't necessarily have to be attached to the person that has a fear. If one person is scared of it, then they all could suffer. And that's kind of what Sarah was saying when she was talking about her brother's fear and him being scared of the cicadas. The fear went from the people or the body of Smiley and manifested as the cicadas and started going around killing everybody. If the kids were used by a witch, it would have been for a ritual like this to give the witch some sort of power. A lot of times, if you're familiar with Game of Thrones, Melisandre, she used power to keep herself looking young or conjure a devil or spirit. Now, we do see on the cave drawing that there is a large red figure with a black shadow. Many people and theories have been speculating that this is the devil. And then this would also tie in with He Who Walks Beyond the Cornfields, Children of the Corn, also the Man in Black, the devil. We do see on the cave drawings exactly what Jade saw. 7 sacrificial tables, 7 kids underneath this symbol, and there's a giant red monster. If this was a ritual and they were supposed to raise this monster, did it raise? Is it there? Is it the entity? We don't know. So how do you get rid of mylings? So because of the horrible nature of their death, there's 2 ways. You either find their bones and bury them, or you give them a name. And we don't know if there's any type of bones hidden anywhere. Nobody has came across any remains. Kids don't look to be murdered, right? They look to possibly starved or possibly sacrificed or life energy drained out of them, but they don't look to be murdered enough to find their bones, because if what Jade saw them on the sacrificial table, if that was their last resting place, then their bones would have still been on that table. It's a vision, and when he snapped out of the vision, sacrificial tables weren't even there. But there is that small cage where they were being kept. So, they haven't been in there yet. So if they go in there, that might be where the bones are. And if this is a myling, then they would be able to take those bones and bury it. Now, the mylings do line up with the Viking mythology. And so I do believe that a myling is a good way to try to figure out what's going on. So what is a ghoul? So if those are ghoulish kids, so what is a ghoul? A ghoul is described as able to assume the shape of an animal, ghost that lives off the flesh of the dead, right? So we haven't seen the kids eat anyone, but Tabitha was very scared and did not want the kids to touch her. Did she think they were going to eat her? And how did she know that they were not supposed to touch her? Did she know that they were ghouls? Did she know that they eat people? Did she know that if they cut her or break the skin, she could get the worms from them? because she seemed like she knew where they was. She did seem like they were speaking to her, because later, when the second time they show herself to her from on the porch, she takes the game that Ethan found in the shed or in the back of the diner and took it back to the cave and said, I was here. So how did she know to do that? So I do think that at this point, Tabitha knows something that has some information that we might not have been able to access. Now, similarly, Edgar Allan Poe does have a poem that briefly talks about ghouls. The reason why I reference Edgar Allan Poe is because there have been 2 poems that have been hidden in the show. There's a poem in the diner that's from Emily Dickinson, Forever is Composed of Nows. And then in the clinic, on the board behind Toby, when he was in the bed right before Sarah killed him, there was a faint poem written on the board in chalk. Some of the words were kind of dusted off, but you could put it together, and it was a poem by Edgar Allan Poe. Now, in this poem, Edgar Allan Poe says, a ghoul is neither man nor woman, neither brute nor human. Breakdown of this poem, it's assumed that ghouls take on disguises and ride on dogs and set fires at night to lure travelers away from the main roads. Now, they didn't light a fire, but they did lure everyone here from the main road. So let's say that there's 2 forces here. Let's say that the boy in white is his own entity, and then let's say there's the kids. Ghoulish kids are controlling the creatures, they're controlling the ravens, and they're controlling the symbol for all intent purposes. And let's say they are the ones, because this is in the ghoul description, down the tree and led it to lead the travelers off the road. So what is a ghastly kid? A ghastly kid is described as a ghost. And like I said, in the credits, there were 3 ghoulish kids, but there was 1 ghastly kid. So there's a difference there. Can't say that the vision that Jade saw was real, meaning that in the caves when he saw the kids, around laying on the sacrificial tables, that wasn't real. So they weren't really there. And there was no sign of where they could have been, or even where those tables could have went. So I'm guessing that they had to die, or I'm guessing that they died before the cave drawing, and whoever killed them drew that to talk about what they did. Of course, we don't know. So we've got ghosts and ghouls. Ghosts, specters of the past living. Ghouls are creatures that can take other forms, can lure people off the road, look for travelers, and apparently eat people. But then the Mylings are the spirits of kids who died that either have to be buried in a cemetery or given a name. And so where does Jade stand in all this? Why did Jade all of a sudden switch from the symbol to finding the kids? And I think this was the biggest twist we saw in season 2, where they reversed the storylines. And I've been trying to figure out what was the point of Jade finding those ghoulish kids after the whole season having him chasing the symbol. And we get to see where the symbol came from, but we don't see what the symbol does, like what it really was. And he didn't hear Ankui, he just saw the symbol. And so now all of a sudden he's hearing Ankui, he's seeing the kids, and he's seeing the symbol. But Tabitha is just seeing the kids. She's not seeing the symbol. So apparently they want certain people to see certain things. And this goes into what I think Jim was kind of getting at when he was like, what are we actually seeing is what they want to show us, and not real. That scene with Jade in the caves and the kids was important because kids had no restraints on, so it wasn't like he had to free them. There was no energy or power coming from any source that had to be destroyed, like Boyd had to destroy the music box, right? So that was Jade goes in the cave, and even though they're there, he sees the symbol, he's mesmerized by it. There was nothing there for him to do besides have that vision. And kind of Jade's been doing that the entire season. So what does it mean? We don't know. Now, if the kids were manifesting this place through their collective minds, I would compare this to Minority Report, if you guys are familiar with that movie. And so I'm not saying that he's not a policeman, working against his own crime that he didn't commit. I'm saying that these kids are great psychics with great power and possibly the potential to see the future. And they were collected or came together and used in this cave to recreate the world whoever once knew, or what they see and don't understand, which can explain why everything is mismatched, meaning the electricity wires that don't go anywhere, pieces of houses from this century, pieces of houses from this decade, cars from here, the whole bunch of mixed match things from the 50s, the 70s, just a mix of stuff that these images might have come to them, but they might not have known what they were. And then when they came together as the 7, they were able to harness and, possibly bring that down. If they are controlling the roots and if they are controlling the trees, then they could easily make a tree fall, easily lure a traveler away from the highway, which they did one at a time. And I think there's so many people ignoring this fact, right? That this was a plan and just kind of making it seem like, it was this game or it was aliens, where they're giving us the clues and we just have to follow them. Obvious that it's like this because someone wanted it to be just like this. And the kids were brought together to physically build this town, mind control the creatures, while either someone is infiltrated the groups on the inside and misleading the residents. There has to be some sort of teamwork going on here, or two things working. Now, where could the kids have come from? Now, we do see there's an elementary school, but based on the clothes and the way they look, they're at a time before schools. And I would say, judging by the blonde hair, them being very skinny, they could be Viking kids. I know I keep pushing the Viking theory, but what else do we have? They're tall, slender, pale, with blonde hair, brunette, or reddish hair. And I say this because they are speaking a language of what we determined as a form of Viking or Bethunk, language that was lost. And they could have been left behind by the Vikings, or they could even be a result of the Vikings being there and could have been abandoned and then turned into the Mylings. Like, this could have been the story, which I hope we get answers to in season 3. So we don't see any skeletons or bones in the cave. And so since we don't see them, we can assume that their spirits are still alive. Because if the bones were buried, then they would be at rest. And so this supports my Myling theory that in order to figure out or what's going on or save the children, you have to find their bones and bury them. When Tabitha was in the cave in episode 2, the creatures did wake up, and the creatures had white eyes and started walking towards her and Victor. And she saw the ball roll out of the cage and hit the stack of rocks. So like I said there, I believe the creatures were level 1, and the Ghoulish Kids were level 2, and the lighthouse was level 3, and the real world is level 4 of the quest. And I believe that Boyd is on level 3, and Jade, who's not far behind, on level 2. Everybody else on level 1. And then when Tabitha and Victor were leaving the cave, we see 2 monsters. Throughout season 2, Tabitha sees the creatures outside of the cage twice. Once by the shed with her and Julie, and once on a porch with her and Ethan. And none of the other people saw him, only her. If the kids are the they that Jim was talking about, he's had a few mentions of they showing you exactly what they want you to see. They being the kids' collective mind, and when they come together, they see certain people at various places and can channel them to Fromville. Now, I do believe the reason some of the people are here now could be because either Tabitha, Jim, Abby, or a few other grandparents were in Fromville before. They could read the people's minds and use that information to bring in some of the residents. Abby saying she saw this in a dream, like Christy bringing in Mari. Kind of like, even to example, Boyd with the whole Brian Kelly situation. Like, these were things that really weren't talked about, just kind of in each person's mind, and then kind of came to manifest. Just like the fears. They don't know who's scared of what, but people have these fears, which is a real thing, and these fears start coming to life. And so that's why I'm thinking that these they do have that mind control. And if you watch season 1, right before the creatures come onto you or attack, they start whispering, but they stopped in season 2. And then when there's a scene when Julie and Fatima are in the colony house looking out the window, she said, yeah, they whisper to you and get into your head. Now, there is a theory that Tilly mentioned that she has 7 grandkids. And there is 7 Ghoulish kids. And so there is a connection that those kids might be Tilly's grandkids. So a lot of the speculation has been that Tilly is the witch, but we don't know. But then someone else also said that witches come in 2s or 3s. So it could be Fatima, Donna, and Tilly as the witches. So what should Jade do next? Now that he knows what the symbol is, he, number 1, has to go back and find Tabitha. And when he leaves the cave, she's not going to be there. So he may have to go on his own quest to find her. And I'm sure he will go as Victor. And Victor will take him to the bottle tree. But I think there might be a twist that the portal or the faraway portal might not be there. Or if it is, it will take him somewhere else once he goes inside. And I think that that's going to just start up the mystery again. I do think that if he does find out that the faraway trees are causing all this, cut the trees down and burn them. And I think that will help. That will help him save everyone in his own way. So why? So the next part of the theory I've been trying to work on is why 7 kids? So of course, the number 7 is considered to be very interesting because it consists of the 2 physical numbers, 4, and the spiritual number 3. In the Pythagorean numerology, the 7 means spirituality. The number 3, sacred or divine. Tying this numerology in with the Viking mythology, Odin was dead for 3 days after he sacrificed himself to become a god. There are 3 roots to the world tree Yggdrasil, and there are 3 Norns who water them daily and spin the thread of fate for all living beings. So there's a lot of connection, especially with the numbers 4 and 7 on the show and in other mythos, from Vikings to tarot to wherever you want to be. And these things are all parallel. Now, I did say that I think that the creators and the writers of the show used a combination of different myths. And there is a possibility that each person could be correct, because I'm sure they're just getting into these theories on the surface level. I'm sure they're not just finding one theory and going all the way down. They're kind of jumping around a little bit. So also, in addition to those Viking numerology, the gods usually form parties of 3, where you'll see any combination of gods, mortals, or giants competing or questing in groups of 3. So maybe that's why there's Boyd, Jade, and Tabitha. That's the main 3. Now, also, the number 4 appears quite often in the show and in the Viking numerology. 4 dwarves that hold up the sky, 4 branches of the Yggdrasil tree. And also, the number 4 is an order of balance. Now, the number 7 is a spiritual number as well, long-suffering or endlessness. Great Vikings were said to have fought in 7 wars. Great sea voyages would often confront hardship for 7 days at a time. It was really wrapped up into a lot of the Viking culture, and a lot of things happened in 7s. And so now we're seeing on the show from a lot of things happen in 7s as well. In summary, the child sacrifice is a ritual killing of children in order to please or appease a deity, supernatural beings, or sacred social order, tribal group, or national loyalties in order to achieve a desired result. As such, is a form of sacrifice, or child sacrifice is thought to be an extreme extension of the idea that the more important the object of sacrifice, the more devout the person rendering it will become. And so the two thoughts are either the witch trapped the kids, kept them in those cages until they needed to be sacrificed for whatever this place was, or the kids are the power, listening to the entity directly like the children of the corn, and are doing whatever it asks them, controlling the dead, taking the form of the crows, and they could be the ones who the creatures are taking the organs from and bringing them back for the kids. And if that's the case, then the kids will be one of the main villains. And so what's left will be just to figure out how the boy in white fits in all this. And so I am working on a couple other videos. I'm trying to work on the one for the boy in white. I hope you guys enjoyed this talk about who are the Ghoulish Kids. As always, I'd love to talk to you guys about it in the comments. So please comment, like, and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next video.